Reuven married Leah, and the marriage did not work out. Decided to divorce her. After he divorced her and he paid the Ketubah contract, the marriage agreement, he decided to have her back. The question is, does he need to write a new Ketubah, or he can use the same form or the same Ketubah that he had in the previous marriage to continue on with the second one, meaning the same person is just coming back. Another scenario we're going to discuss is Grusha Yevama. Reuven married Leah and he passed away. His brother Shimon, who is the next in line, levirate her, meaning marry the surviving wife, and then the marriage did not work out, he divorced her. Question number one, can he have her back? Question two, if he can have her back, what type of Ketubah needs to be involved, needs to be written? The scenario we like to start with basically is the continuation of yesterday, the story of Pumpedita. To refresh our memory, we discussed yesterday a situation with three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven married Leah. He married Leah. They lived together. Reuven prospered tremendously, and unfortunately he had no children and he passed away. Now Leah is basically Shomeret Yavam, which means she is waiting to marry the next in line, which is Shimon. Levi, the youngest brother, realized that Reuven has a lot of estate, so he figured out if his older brother Shimon marry her, he will lose any access to that estate. So he basically told his brother that he's planning to write a get and throw it to her. By doing so, he put a boundary. Here he put he circumscribed, he limits her ability to go and marry his brother, the Yavam. And in a way, it's like the story of Samson. Neither you nor me will get anything of the estate. Shimon, upon hearing that, he said to his brother, why you need to do that? So, in a sense, neither you nor me will get anything from the estate of our late brother. Here is the deal. I sign with you, or I promise you in the case of Pumbedida, that I will share with you the estates. Let me marry her, let me levirate her, and after I marry Leah, I will split with you the estate. So we discussed yesterday the situation in Pumbedida. The brother levirate her, married her, and then ignore his younger brother. And his younger brother loses it. Furthermore, we discussed yesterday a situation that happened at that time, that very shortly before Leah was about to levirate, to marry Shimon, she passed away. And it was the issue yesterday of burial expenses, since there are two parties involved. Leah, in that case, before she married Reuven, she brought an estate from her father. And the heir splits between Shimon, who's supposed to be the newly husband in a short time, versus the heir from the family who precedes her marriage to Reuven. So we explained yesterday, since Shimon is about to exercise the right of the Ketubah of his deceased brother, in the same manner, he have to exercise to use the estate, at least in part, to pay for the burial expenses. That's imposed upon him. But back to our subject, here Levi said to Shimon, to his brother, hey, I know the case in Pumbedita, in that city, how this brother cheated on him, how Shimon cheated on Levi, so I'm not going to let it happen. So he basically forced his brother to sign a contract with him in advance, that they split the estate, in order for him not to be vengeful and throw a get to Leah, and by doing so, she will not be able to marry his oldest brother. So here we are, page 82, 8 lines from the top of the page. It's a place in Babylon called Mata Mechasya. It was a certain man that he was the oldest brother who supposed to levirate the surviving wife of his deceased brother. Exactly match the story we discussed yesterday. The younger brother wants to get even and to avoid his brother from marrying the surviving wife. How? He wants to throw or give a get to her, regardless if she wanted or not, and by doing so he forced her to change her status from a widow to divorcee. The moment she turned to be a divorcee, she can no longer apply to a levirate marriage. By doing so, his brother, neither him nor his brother, have an access to a state that the deceased brother left. Is that clear? Everyone understand it? Okay. Amar Lei, the oldest brother said, let's call him name, Shimon. Shimon said to Levi, the third brother, right? My da'atech, why you are so mean? Why you don't want me to act in a levirate marriage? Im mishum nichsei, oh, you care for the estate that Reuven left. Ana benichse pelgin alach. Guess what we're going to do? I'm going to sign with you. I'm going to promise or sign or whatever we agree to split the estate. So, meaning, even I, meaning Shimon, the surviving brother, the oldest surviving brother, who's the one who entitled to do Yebum, and the moment he act in a matter of levirate, he entitled for the estate of the surviving brother as the newly husband of Leah. But he said, since he wants to avoid Levi from access and taking over, so if you are concerned for me, marry Leah is the estate, guess what we do? We'll split it, which means it's in a way like I did chalitza, and now we split it. Amar lei, good morning. So, Amar lei mistefina, I am concerned. De'avid adlik, de'avid pumbedita rama. Guess what? I know the story what this guy in Pumbedita, the cheater, the unscrupulous guy did it to his brother. I know what you're planning to do. You're planning to cheat me the same as that guy did, and that's your plan. Is that clear? Amar lei, so the oldest brother said, guess what? If that's your concern, okay. Here is the story. You know what you're going to do? At this very moment, or right now, we make a kinyan. Kinyan, you remember what is kinyan? Kinyan is a transaction between the two parties. We make a kinyan. We basically write down what is the estate involved, the properties, the whatever involved, right? And you tell me which part of the estate you want. And then the moment that happened, automatically the Ritva explained, you access to your portion, and it's over. So the Pnei Yehoshua asked, does he have the right to do it? What do you mean by that? Wait a second. He's not even married her. So he is already setting up plan to do something with the estate of the surviving brother, while this guy, Shimon, the oldest brother, is not even married her. So he has the right to make this type of transactions.
Same milog or
what?
Is it Tzom Barzel milog? It doesn't matter either, but it's milog.
But it's not just. It's the point. How, in a sense of chalot, how in the sense of estate right?
Right, because he's not married yet.
Yes,
right.
it's
so he has
a
no right to it.
pre-acquisition contract that it's in a way not even an access as a regular litigant of promissory note,
right.
Because Shimon, at that very moment of signing the contract, you can write a postponing contract. But the effectiveness of the date and time of the contract is not an effective date because Shimon doesn't have the access to that estate. Right? Anyway.
Can they do a conditional kinyan? I mean,
how you do a conditional if you don't own it?
You say once I'm married, you will.
That's the Pnei Yehoshua question. He said that.
I mean,
anything happen in a second, person
right.
disappear.
Right.
So and then this contract is null and void.
Right. I mean, if you don't get married, then the contract's nothing.
But you want it to be.
So I'll say the Tosfot basically dealt with this question. Tosfot said, is in Bava Metzia. It's a disputation in Gemara between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. If Adam yachol le'aknot davar shelo ba la'olam, if a person can make a matter of acquisition for someone who is not yet in the physical world, a baby was not born yet. Okay. So Rav said a person can do it. We follow Rabbi Yochanan that said a person cannot make a precondition.
So Rav did say you could do a precondition, but
I'll give you a similar example.
That doesn't currently exist in this
I'll give you a
world,
similar example. Listen, Gilbert. Listen to this. It's a estate of several people. I mean, several brothers and sisters. They have. It's a case that I'm aware of. They have a apartment in Israel, and they have a state movable object the fathers have. In that case, the father have, it's a religious family, the father have a lot of kitvei yad, old handwritings from a great sages that live, who knows, hundreds of years ago. What?
Metal to live, movable objects that are very
we
valuable.
talk about Judaica, old letter from 300-400 years ago from the greatest rabbis, which worth a lot.
Yeah.
And old antiques books. So they have one brother who's very ill, and the second brother for years taking care of the youngest brother. The father turned ill. The mother called the middle brother, and she said, okay, dad is not well. I talked to the sister, they don't mind. This apartment that dad and I lives is going to be yours for solely purpose of taking care of the sick young brother who never married, sick young brother. By the same token, she said to that brother that I'm giving you everything. Whenever the father is gone, 120, you get also all the estate. So the oldest brother heard about it, and he went to a prominent rabbi, which I know, and he asked a question. Is that legitimate by Jewish law? Why? The oldest brother said, look, I understand mom wants to take care of the youngest brother, and I'll go along with that as far as money is concerned. Let her give the apartment, which is worth money, and take care of the younger brother. I'll go along with that. But does she have the right over all these piles of books and letters that can worth a lot of money, since it is the father, and the father is very ill, he cannot speak, cannot act at this point, but he's alive? Does she have the right and access to the father? The answer is, by halacha, no. No. She have the right over the apartment. She have the right, regardless if it's her name by halacha or doesn't have a name,
Right.
she have the right over the money. As far as the estate itself that the father accumulates, as long as he is alive, it's his decision.
So that's according to Rabbi Yochanan. Then.
Yes,
Yeah. And
yes.
then- okay.
After he's gone, they have to look at the will, or they have to look at the Bedi needs to make a decision.
But if
Which
he
means
cannot,
what?
if he cannot speak or can do anything, then somebody have to represent him. She's his wife.
Okay, so she represents him as far as the money, the apartments, but the estates. The oldest brother said, "I don't want the money, but I want something that inherited from one generation to the next, couple of 100 years old books, and handwritings of rabbis and things. That's very valuable for me. I'm not ready and willing to let my brother have everything. I'll not get along with that. It's not fair. It's not right." So he asked halachically if she have the right to do it, and the answer is no.
He got a good point.
Halachically, who represents it? Wouldn't it be one of the sons that represents the father? Or
Halachically, in general, the oldest son get
Right.
double.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, not the wife.
Whether
so.
unless there's a will that said he can't have them, right?
Right, no, but
No, even the will said whatever the will said. If it's not matched the halacha, the will is
Because-
meaningless. The only thing to circumvent the
Torah
will
is
by Jewish
very
law,
specific
it's a
about
good
before,
point,
yeah.
is called matana mechayim, which means while the one of the parents
Right.
alive, they have the right to give the daughter or whoever they wish, the cousin, the maid, whatever they wish, a gift. Right? They have the right to do it. In America, they give it to the dog,
So
right?
likely
In some
the
places.
oldest-
In Florida, you know
I mean,
that lady in Florida?
So Rabbi,
But in Torah,
$2 million to a dog.
Torah not only says about the
Anyway.
Bechor getting
So
it,
I
but it's
like
even saying that if
the
the oldest son
oldest
is the
child.
son of the hated
Get
wife,
double.
get
you still
double.
have to,
Double.
you
And
can't
the
take
one
it away from him. So
who-
there's
So
just,
if
Who
the
will
will
actually
was done
manage the estate?
halachically, the will would have made sure.
I like
In a
it.
way, in a way.
it has to, right.
You know the case
Yeah.
with the dog
so
in
you
Florida?
just can't take the inheritance.
The guy,
away
the
from oldest son,
lawyer,
regardless.
do you read the paper?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, in Torah
What?
it says it twice.
The lady left, the old lady left to her dog. She had a son,
even if he's
and she didn't like her son, who will rarely visit her, so she put the whole will to a dog. And the attorney, what they do, the attorney, you know the story, the attorney decided that the dog needed special treatment, so he took the dog to Hawaii for a couple of weeks. It's a part of him treating the dog. The problem is that he put the dog to sleep, and someone recognized that, you know, on the plane. Anyway, אמר מר ברבשי, אבל גם בחיית הרב דימי אמר רבי יוחנן, האומר לחברו, לך משוך פרה זו ולא תהיה קנויה לך אלא לאחר 30 יום. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Israel to Babylon, so he said name of Rabbi Yochanan, if someone made a kinyan meshicha meaning you're pulling something, by halacha for example, you can make agreement with someone. For example, you purchase something. In order for that to have the exercise, if you pay attention when we're selling the chametz, I always ask you to take something, the handkerchief or something, and lift it up, right? So that's a kinyan. So in that sense, he said, move this cow, and it will be yours 30 days from now. לאחר 30 יום קנה, ואפילו עומדת באגם. So even that cow is over there, which means it's not in a state of the purchaser, since they made that kinyan meshicha, since they make this a matter of transaction between two parties, is ineffective 30 days later, regardless where's the cow at that very moment. Ha'atam, the case that Rabbi Yochanan referred there, beyado, meaning he has the access, the legitimate right over the estate, over the cow. Hachalav beyado, but here the Avam, Shimon, has no right over the estate at this very moment, so therefore he cannot exercise retroactive act of the estate at this very moment. So here is the question that Pnei Yoshua explained the Rashi here. What exactly involved here? Is that true to say, as we study on page 81, a person can retroactively make a manner of acquisition? The answer is no. Again and again, just to make sure that everyone on the same page. Reuven married Leah. Reuven left a lot of estate. Shimon is the next brother in line. Levi is the third brother. Okay? The argument between Levi and Shimon, Levi wants to forcefully give Leah a get. And Shimon in exchange offered him to split the estate before he married Leah. And he does that in order to avoid Levi to limit him and himself from the estate. Shimon come to Levi with a deal stating we can make an agreement now over the estate. So the Pnei Yehoshua said, hey, wait a second. And that's, by the way, the Tosfot said here too. That how a person can retroactively make this agreement. Now, the beauty is the answer. The Gemara said, Lo kasha de'amar lakni me'achshav, hada lo amar lakni me'achshav. Here we have to differentiate when it's come to cow. So you're moving the cow now, it's yours, but you keep it there. For example, you can buy a car and you can say to a dealer, okay, I don't have all the money, it's a cash deal, or the seller, I keep it in your parking spot, but it's mine, all right? Or I give you all the money now, I give you some of the money, I give you down payment, whatever it is, but it's mine, all right? So here Tosfot explained to us that if it's kinyan kesef, if it's money, so in that sense, one party can give the other some cash or some money in advance, and by doing so, you make it transactions between two parties, because you give something that is valuable. Versus, in the case of Yavam, he has no access to the estate at this point, so he retroactively cannot make that arrangement with his brother because he's not on the estate at this point. Is that clear? And that's the reason why yesterday we used the story of Pumpedita that's it in Babylon, because the guy was cheater. He basically cheated his brother by doing so. He was afraid that his brother is going to give a get and avoiding him from marrying her. So now, since we are dealing with the access of the Yavam to split the estate of the deceased brother, so they ask, one of the giant sages whose name is Ula, they ask him a question, the students. Yibem ve'achar kach chilek ma'u. So Shimon make a Levirate marriage with Leah, and then he split the estate with Levi. So the answer is, lo asa ve'lo klum, is nothing. So they said, chilek ve'achar kach yibem ma'u. If he have the access to estate somehow, and he split it, and then he acted in Levirate marriage toward Leah, he said, lo asa ve'lo klum. מה תקיף לרב ששת, השתה ייבם ואחר כך חילק, לא עשה ולא כלום, חילק ואחר כך ייבם מבעיה? Because what happened is, the moment you do a yibum, you have zacha, you have the privilege, you have the right, you have the access. So, does that mean that if you divided the estate before you act in a Levirate marriage, is that have an effectiveness? So they said, Shnei Ma'asim, you guess what? This was two different cases, two different stories. Which means, this question they asked, it was not just hypothetical discussion question. It was a story that happened, and consequently it was asked to make sure that that it's clear. And each story was asked, each question was asked from a student that wasn't aware of the other question. כי אתה רבין אמר הריש לקיש, בן ייבם ואחר כך חילק, בן חילק ואחר כך ייבם, לא עשה ולא כלום, והלכתה לא עשה ולא כלום. So, bottom line is, he's done nothing, regardless. So you see here halachic applications. I give you examples. You call a hotel, you make your reservations, okay? And you want a specific room. you go in our hotels, right? You have a choice for some hotels. It's so funny. Either to see the beautiful water or to see a cemetery. You know what I'm talking about. One of the hotels. So the question is, someone ordered a room. And the room, he specifically wanted a specific room. And when you get there, you realize that the front desk person placed him or her in a different room. So is that considering bitul mekach, which means that the guy need to compensate for disappointment or not? I'll give you another example. You buying a special seat on a plane. You have a long flight. You fly to New Zealand, right, to Australia. You requested a special seat, special arrangement. And all of a sudden you get on a plane and they put you in the middle seat on the back of the plane, right, close to the bathroom, right? So, can you claim for anything? So, the idea is what?
The airline will sometimes.
Yeah, they compensate you something.
They compensate you though.
Yeah.
Okay, so by halacha, we differentiate between a permanent place, makom kavua, and not. But what I try to tell you is it's derivative indirectly from this sugya. So the Mishnah said on page 80, page 80b, החכמים אומרים, פירות המחוברים לקרקע שלו. Meaning, they differentiate between produce that attached to the ground, the produce that was detached. If they attach, if the brother left, the deceased brother left produce, for example, tree with oranges, those oranges attached to the ground, meaning they are still in a tree, so it belongs to the brothers. So the Mishnah dealing with limitation of right of the estate of the deceased, how far the estate connected to the marriage contract, to the Ketubah. Meaning, since you have a framework of marriage contract that the deceased signed up estate to her by the Ketubah contract, how much estate was subjugated to that agreement. So, according to the general statement of the Mishnah, is no limitation of the access right of that detached produce, because it's not part of the estate subjugation to the Yevama Ketubah, the Yevama marriage contract. So the Gemara said, Amai, why you said that that produce has no limit accessibility? כל נכסיו אחראים והקראים לכתובתה. Guess what? If you look at the estate of the deceased, it's all connected to her ketubah, which means Reuven signed a ketubah, a marriage agreement with Leah, and as long as she's not gets what it's written, any estate by halacha, any estate that belongs to the deceased is subjugate to accessibility of that ketubah. So if you have produce that attach to the ground, we treated them as the ground itself. So even according to majority of the sages that said that the movable object are not part of the ketubah marriage contract subjugations, these produce were attached to the ground. In a sense, you cannot get rid of them. You cannot get rid of that principle. For example, the guy wants to cut the tree, eat the oranges, and use the wood for other purposes. So you are taking away the principle that she survived with that principle, right? It's connected to her ketubah. Amar Reish Lakish, Reish Lakish said, you know what? The way that you should amend the text and teach, Shela, product that is attached to the ground is hair, which means it's a mistaken in the way you read the Mishnah. And the truth is, the sages hold that if you have produce that attached, they are basically belong to the surviving wife, the Yevama, in part of her marriage contract, the same as all the other estate, and therefore the Yavam cannot eat them, but the only thing what he can do is he can substitute them by estate, so she always can have the principal. The Mishnah said knasa. Mishnah tells us that if he married her, so harei keishto, we treated her as a regular wife. What do you mean? The ma'ilcheta. Why you need to tell me? The moment he married her is his wife. The answer is, אמר רבי יוסי ברבי חנינא לומר שמגרשה בגט ומחזירה. Wait a second. In a way, their marriage, you may call it by default. Why? Because originally speaking, she wasn't his wife. She was his wife by force of circumstance. So therefore, if the marriage not work out, the question is how you treat it. If you tell me that he provide a divorce agreement, a regular get, like a regular wife, she's no longer in need of chalitza. What happened if he wants to have her back? Meaning, he is now married her, he divorced her, and he wants her back. So if he's a regular Israel, we say that we treat it like a regular wife. Since a regular wife, you can have her back even after you divorce her, as long as she's not married to anyone else. The same way you treated Yevama, that if you marry the wife of your deceased brother and then you divorce her, you can have it back, which means you do not have this idea of divorce and no longer have her back. For example, if he was a Kohen and he Levirate her, and then the marriage did not work out and he divorced her, and then like Achashverosh he regretted, it's too late. Alright? Versus a regular Israeli can have her back. So now the Gemara involved with this decision and said, Megarsha beget pshita, that's obvious. Ma'od etayma v'yibma marachmana, v'adayin yibumim arishonim shela, she still have a title of Levirate of Yevama, even he married her because of her special circumstance of marriage. Lo tizgela beget ela b'chalitza, you may request in addition to give her a divorce paper to also release her. Kamash melan, so therefore the Tana come and teach us that the moment he made the Levirate marriage, the moment he make the Yibum, she is changed her status and she is now a total regular wife-husband relationships. And therefore, you do not need chalitza anymore, you only need the get. By doing get, it's over. So it's a disputation between the Rambam and the Nimukei Yosef in regards to a case, Talmudic case, of someone who married 4 wives. If someone married 4 wives, and if it's an issue of chalitza and not yibum, so Nimukei Yosef have the notion that the obligation between him and her is divided to a month, which is a once a week, versus the Rambam that hold is once a month. Why? Because it's all in this notion that if you treat it as a husband and wife, you treat it in that sense, what is the minimum obligation? And we go by the measurement we study, if you remember, the early part of this tractate. So now the Gemara go by the second chidush. The second idea that Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, will you tell me that after the Yavam married the Yevama, and then he divorced her, Machzira, the same as a regular wife. So the Gemara said, it is Pshita, it was obvious. Why? Even she is Shomeret Yavam, meaning Leah is waiting for Shimon to marry her, and he did Chalitza, or he gave her a get, so automatically she is prohibited to him forever. If he did the Chalitza, she is prohibited to him by a biblical term. If he gave her a get, she is prohibited to him only by a rabbinic term. That's what we study in Tractate Yavamot, page 10, because we learn it from the text in Deuteronomy 25, Asher lo yivne et beit achiv. So it means that's specifically for Yavam that did not act in a Levirate marriage. But here, the way Rabbi Gaon explained to us, it's basically he did it because he's already married her, he Levirate her. 82b, Ma'u de Tema mitzvah dirma rachamana alei avada v'hashta tikum alei b'isur eshetach. Without the statement of the Mishnah, we may say as follows. Listen carefully to the whole understanding. We have in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus 18, a list of prohibited relations. One of them is a brother that married and passed away. If you have children, it's called Isur Eshet Ach. The surviving brother by Torah law is prohibited to marry the wife of his deceased brother. By the same token, if his brother passed childless, we learn that it's a mitzvah of Levirate, of Yibum, Deuteronomy 25, that said that the surviving brother have a mitzvah to have children by redeeming the soul of his brother, by perpetuating the soul, by marrying the surviving wife. Now, Tosfot tells us here that if the brother married her, cohabited with her, the moment that happened is already the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Now, the notion here is they are live together, and it turns that the marriage did not work out. Meaning, we have this brother, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven passed away. Shimon, the surviving brother, married the wife of the deceased, let's call her Leah. They are together, and unfortunately, the deal didn't come true. They are married, but they're unhappy. So what happened is, he is now divorced her. Now, let's understand the category. If Shimon originally refused to marry her, refused to do a Levirate Yibum marriage, then is a concept called Chalitza, which means he released her. Versus here is Get, which means if he married her and the marriage did not work out and he divorced her, it's a different form, it's Get. Now, here is the difference. The moment Shimon gave Leah Chalitza, which means he refused to marry her, and as a result he released her, she for everlasting prohibited to have anything to do with him. Versus if Shimon married her, and they're already a married couple, even for a short period of time, and he divorced her, then it's a different story. So originally speaking, we may have that notion that since Shimon fulfilled the mitzvah of Levirate marriage by marry Leah, and the moment that happened, if he divorced her, it's over, and you may think that in that sense, there is no difference between Get and Chalitza, between divorce and release. Maybe she returned to a state of a prohibition of marriage, the wife of the deceased brother who in a regular case have a children, and the Torah in Leviticus 18 prohibited the brother to marry her. Kamash Melan. So the Tanakh come and teach us. The moment that this Shimon the Yevama married Leah, she is considering now as his legitimate, regular, total wife-husband relationship, and therefore, if he divorced her as a regular Yisrael, he can have her back as a regular divorcee if she did not marry anyone. So, Tosfot tells us here, the beauty of that is that you cannot compare the history of her relationship with him versus now. Let's make sure that we all understand. She originally, in her relationship with him, with Shimon, is between mitzvah and total prohibition. Because when she marries his brother, she's prohibited to him. If he refused to marry her, Shimon, and he released her, she's prohibited to him forever. Yet the moment he decided, Shimon, to levirate her, to marry her, she changed her status and she is a regular wife. Now, since divorce took place, you may have this type of notion that she returned to a position of chalitza, which is the boundaries. We said no. The moment they became a regular manner of couple, that's the beauty of this Tosfot. The married couple, therefore, it's a married couple. So if it's Israel, he divorced her, he can have her back. So the Gemara said, "Ve'ema chename." So you may say that that's correct, which means, how do you know that she doesn't need to have any form of chalitza? How do you know that he allowed to have her back based on what we study in Yevamot 39? Amakra, the Torah said in Deuteronomy 25 verse 5, Ulekacha lo leisha, and he will take her to him to be his wife, which I have a very clear statement that indicated that once he kevan shelekacha naaset keishto, that the moment he is quote unquote taking her, which means married her, she has become like his regular wife in all different aspects. So therefore, in the manner of the law of Yibum, the zikat Yibum, the any type of levirate interaction is no longer in effect, Rashi said, and therefore she doesn't need any form of chalitza, only a get. Now, the Ramban, Nachmanides asked, so how you treated this manner of Ketubah? Does he needs to give an additional Ketubah or not? Because think about it. When Reuven married Leah, he originally gave her a marriage contract, a Ketubah. Now Reuven is gone, Shimon entered to that Levite marriage. He carries, you remember we talked about burial expenses? So he carries the obligation of his brother, which means, you remember the story of Boaz and Ruth, and Ploni, Almoni, and Tov in the book of Ruth. Boaz in the court said to that fellow who was closest to Boaz, to Ruth, he said to him, hey, it's not just you marry this beautiful woman, you also have what? You have also all these responsibilities, all these obligations. It's a package deal. So in that sense, why the Yavam did not need to provide her another Ketubah, that's the Ramban point. I would like to add something from the Tzanzer Rebbe. The Divrei Chaim, the late great Rebbe of Tzanz, he asked a question. Let's say if she has blemishes. Let's say she cannot walk straight. She have a leg issue. So if is no chalitza, she cannot, part of the chalitza is using the leg, right? So you have to have yibum. So how you treat it? So the Divrei Chaim said, if she cannot physically perform the chalitza, so in that rare case, he needs to have a yibum and get.
Right, makes sense.
Now, we have the Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom. Some argue that it's not applicable, some say that it's still, but anyway, we as Ashkenazi community for a long time followed the Cherem, the special decree of Rabbeinu Gershom, that he said, it's the 13th century rabbi, he said that you cannot, one of his takanot is, you cannot divorce a woman without her consent. Meaning, up to Rabbeinu Gershom, a man can divorce, doesn't ask her anything, goodbye. Rabbeinu Gershom instituted that she needs to consent. So, in our days, as you learn, remember we learned Abba Shaul in the Yevamot, that said that in our days, when it's matter of Yibum, so many times people marry because of money, because of beauty. It's not really because they want to perpetuate the soul of the deceased. So in that sense, Divrei Chaim said that you need to kofin alav legarsha, you force him to divorce her, afilu be'al kocha, even without her consent. That's the Divrei Chaim said, that's the beauty we derive from here. Anyway, so the Mishnah continued and said, Bilvad sheteh ktubta al nichsei ba'ala harishon. So the Mishnah said that she has the status of his wife in all respect after a Levirate marriage, except that the responsibility for her marriage contract is upon the property of her first husband. So it means that the Yavam, Shimon, has no obligation to exercise the payment of the Ketubah, the marriage contract, by himself, which means he doesn't need to use his own estate, but he take this Ketubah commitment and he apply to the estate of the deceased brother, that he automatically, as a Yavam, as the brother, inherited. So the Gemara now elaborates and explain why is that. My Tama, what's the reason? What's the reason that the Shi'abud Ketubah, it's not on the newly husband, the second brother? Isha iknulu min hashamayim. It's because the heaven, they acquired the wife for him. Meaning, think about it. Did Shimon chooses her at the first place? No. It was a force of the Torah law, Torah commandment, that he is not obligated to set aside for a marriage contract of his own. Rather, he relies upon his brother's marriage contract, because his brother have the desire to marry her, his brother marry her. He is just, in our language, lucidly speaking, by default marry her, because the Torah gave him the option either to levirate or to release her. So he came to the picture by force of heaven. It's not that he designated her as the first place as his wife, at least not the way we understand it. So it's a book called Atvan Deoraita, written by the great Rabbi Yosef Engel, and he said the idea of the Ketubah, in a sense, he perpetuated the Ketubah of his brother, which means the original Ketubah was the Reuven, his brother. Now Shimon came in, he needs to handle all this headache and estate and Ketubah from his late brother. That's part of the deal. It's not just perpetuating having children that name after the deceased, but also carries the Ketubah and all its obligation from the brother. So now the Gemara limited, the circumscribed the Mishnah ruling, and they said ve'it lei la merishon, if she doesn't have a ketubah, a marriage contract, from the first husband. For example, if the first husband did not left enough estate, or as the Rambam said in L'chot Ishut chapter 22, if she let go, she forgive her husband for the ketubah. For example, they married, they have financial challenges, and she saw the husband is under huge pressure. So she said, the amount of money that you commit yourself in the Ketubah, I can sign up that you are free from paying me that amount of commitment you make in the Ketubah. So they said, Itla Misheni. So it means that when the Yavam, when the brother come in the picture and married her, so therefore the sages instituted that he have the obligation to write a new Ketubah to her, and therefore his estate, meaning Shimon, the brother's estates, now are basically have a indirect lien or direct lien, depending how you're writing it, that basically subjugated. It's a lien for the newly Ketubah that Shimon have toward her, since again she let go the Ketubah, the marriage contract of the first husband. כדי שלא תהא קלה בעיניו להוציאה. The only reason the rabbis instituted the ketubah, the marriage contract, is because the rabbis wants to make sure that the man should not divorce his wife, boom, boom, 1, 2, 3. So he will not be dim in his eyes such as that he will easily divorce her. So they put an institution that if you divorce her, you have to pay. So if you remember, we studied it on page 11, and that's also the Rambam explained to us in Ilchot Ishut, chapter 10, that when you have the estate of the deceased in the amount that the man, the deceased, commit himself in the marriage contract, so you do not need to put any institution from the estate of the Yavam. Why? Because he inherited the estate of his deceased brother. And as the Tosfot in Yevamot 39 explained to us, he will loses that part if he divorced her. So now, think together with me. That's one of the notion of the poskim. They said, if Reuven betrothed a woman, and somehow it was not a Ketubah, and she's Betula, she's total virgin. Reuven passed away. Shimon, his brother, come in, and he make a yibum. So this is a question posted to the late giant sage Rav Eliashiv, may he rest in peace. They asked him a question, since you tell me that this is a heaven decision, that Shimon will levirate, will redeem the soul of Leah, so therefore, how much is the Ketubah? Do you treat it as a regular virgin? Why? Because imagine, if Reuven married her, and God forbid, hour after they got married, they didn't have any relation, he passed, she is still virgin. So when Shimon comes in, does he need to treat it as a 200 or 100? 100 is someone who's be'ula, already have relation. 200 is for betula, for total first time. So Rabbi Eliashiv said, you treat it as maneh bilvad, it's only 100. Why? Because he followed this notion in our sugya, that he said that since he continued living with her, so it's considering a framework of be'ula. So the whole idea, not everyone agree with the Rav in that sense, but the idea is that you may argue that the bi'ah, the relation, happened with him, but still the Ketubah, Rabbi Eliashiv hold that is only maneh, only 100. So the Mishnah continued and said, Lo yomar la, harei Ketubatech, he cannot say to her, here is your marriage contract, and similarly a man may not make such a statement to his wife. That's what the Mishnah said. Rather, all of his property is mortgaged for her marriage contract. So the Gemara said, my vechen, why you have an afkamina, a differentiation between Yevama and a regular wife? What you meant to say that is any level of degradation between a regular wife and Yevama? Mahu detema. You may think Hatamu was specifically in the rule of Yevama. You may say that the Yavam cannot designate amount of money that will be in charge to pay off the Ketubah of the Yevama. Why? Because the lo katabla is not inscribed in the marriage contract that dekanai udekanina. Part of the marriage contract is any matter of acquisition that I purchase or will purchase, meaning the Yavam did not try to Yevama on the Ketubah that everything, all his estate will be part of that marriage contract. That's the way Rashi explained. In other words, all the shi'abud nechasim, all the lien on the estate apply to the estate that come out as inheritance from the deceased brother. אבל הכה, in a regular manner of husband-wife, דכתב לה, because the husband write in a ketubah, דקנאי ודקנינה, that the one that I have bought, or I will buy, is mortgaged to the marriage contract. So therefore, Ema samcha da'ata, which means she have smichut da'at, she have in her mindset a notion that when a time comes, she can exercise her ketubah, her marriage contract, from the husband or from the heir, from the inheritors, meaning even that designated money will lost, she can collect from the rest of his estate. So therefore, if he designates some money, will not create animosity toward the Yavam, because she's always feel, that's the Maram Shif said, that she's always feel that there is availability of money, Kamash Melan. So therefore the Tanakh come and teach us that even a regular way of manner in relationship between husband and wife, meaning a regular wife, the husband should not designate a special estate to pay off her ketubah. Guess why? Think together with me. She's seeing that he put a estate and he write down, this estate is going to be paid off the moment we get divorced. In your mind. Guess what? He is already pre-planned to get rid of me, right? To break up and divorce me. So therefore, you don't do that. That's the idea. Gersha, see how smart the rabbis, right? Gersha, en la ela ktubta. The Mishnah states that if he divorced her, she has only her marriage contract, which means you don't have any lien upon the property, and he may therefore sell it. So the Gemara said, Gersha in, la Gersha lo, which means if he divorces her, it's okay, right? But which means he can sell the estate of the deceased brother. Lo Gersha, but if he's not divorcer, lo. He, as long as he is in charge, the estate is the heir, and he cannot have the free choice, the free will to sell it independently just by his will. Kamash Melan. So the Tana teaches the way we learn on page 81, Kede Rabbi Abba, that who claims that the only way he can gain full control of all the property is by what? By divorcing her. Otherwise, without her consent, he cannot do it. Tosfot comment here, running out of time, just in short, that the amount of money cannot exceed the Ketubah commitment, which means you have a Ketubah commitment, the marriage contract, which framework amount of payment. So therefore the estate, as far as the connection between the estate and Ketubah, cannot exceed the framework of the Ketubah. Anyway, you can read it Tosfot more, it elaborates. Anyway, the Mishnah concluded in regards to Yavam that divorced his Yavama after he married her. Hechzira, meaning Shimon divorced her. He did not pay off the Ketubah yet, but he have Leah back. Harei kechol Nashim ve'en la ela ktubta. So she is treated like every normal other manner of women, and she have just the regular original first Ketubah and nothing different. So it means, Rashi explained to us, that regardless if you have a regular wife or you have Yevama, after she returned, the husband doesn't need to pay off the original first Ketubah until he have her back from the first marriage, which means she collect only one Ketubah and not two marriage contracts. Yevama, the second, meaning when she act in a levirate way and marry that, she have the lien on the deceased estate, the same as she was in the original manner of marriage with the original oldest deceased brother. So the Gemara said, Hechezira mai kamashmelan. Why? What is special when you say that if you have her back, you treated her like all the other wives? Tanina, because this is a Mishnah which I'm going to study on page 89b, in regular wife, Hamegareshet ha'isha umachazira. If someone married and then divorced and then have her back, al menat Ketubah rishona machzira. So he said here he marries her on the basis of her first marriage contract, and he need not write her a new one. So why is it necessary to emphasize this halacha in a case of Yevama? So the Gemara responds, Ma'u de tema, without that, what we understand from the Mishnah, Ishtohu de'it hu katav la Ketubah minei. Specifically, this manner applies to his wife. Why? Because the husband have her back in a second marriage. He wrote her a marriage contract to collect from his estate, which means the original Ketubah is on him and on his estate. Aval yevimto, but his yevama that he married, the lo ihu katavla, that this yavam did not wrote to her the Ketubah, but it's the one who is the oldest deceased husband, brother, wrote, and therefore the shi'abud, the lien, is on the estate of the deceased. Heicha de girsha ve'ahadera, when the yavam divorced her and then have her back, a maktubta minei. You may say that the marriage contract from the second time applies to him, which means that now he and his estate is part of that Ketubah, Kamash Melan. So therefore, the Tana Tisha Shinao Mishnah that is not so, but even with the Yavam that have his Yevim to return to him, the second marriage, applies to the first Ketubah. So nowadays, when you have this halachic question about returning wives, returning ex in a regular Israel, it's a debate, but most of the poskim hold that the person needs to write a new Ketubah. Now the Gemara elaborates in regards to the lien between the Ketubah, the marriage contract, and estates that the husband had. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Barishona yukudvim livtula 200 ule'almana maneh. That's the way we have. Virgin 200, almana is 100, and you put aside the estate what the husband had. That's this framework, and that's it. V'mazkinim v'lo nosim nashim. So the woman doesn't want to bother get married. Why? So they figure out they will not be able to collect the Ketubah. Why not be able? Let's think together with me. Guess what's happening? If the man, right, commit himself to 100, 200, and it's not subject to lien on his estate, so basically is no guarantee, especially if it's an animosity or issue between husband and wife, is no guarantee that she has the amount of the Ketubah contract exercised in reality of divorce. And unfortunately, the way that the rabbi sees it, when people are in a deep love, they get high and commit themselves to anything. When they get divorced, they get even in such a way sometimes that they're paying back and they purposely doesn't want to pay anything, and they get even to even punish the ex-spouse. So here is a giant rabbi that came in, his name is Shimon ben Shetach, that saw the issue, he saw the flag. The Ritva explained, based on this Rashi, and also you see it in Shita Mekubetzet, he said, guess what? The wives were concerned that clandestinely, surreptitiously, the husband will sell the estate and they hide, or they put it in Luxembourg or Switzerland bank, the money, and other estates, and they get to divorce, I have nothing. So, therefore, Ad Sheba Shimon ben Shetach, this giant rabbi, giant ancient sage, you hear his name in the era of the pair, in the Pirkei Avot, Vetiken, and he instituted, Kol nechasav achrayin lektubata. So he said, guess what? From now on, that the sum of marriage contract, it's all, guess what? It's part of their Ketubah. Which means he put an audience that the man need not place the money aside, but all of his property is guaranteed for a marriage contract. So therefore, she can, if she's no other way for her to collect the fund that he commit himself, she can go over those buyer-purchaser of the estate of the husband and collect the fund. Tanya Nameachi, we see it in another Braita, בראשונה היו כותבים לבתולה 200 ולאלמנה מנה, the same way, והיו מזקינים ולא היו נושאים נשים. התקינו שיהיו מניחים אותה בבית אביה, which means that since she departed from her father's house, so they leave a guarantee money in their father's house in order for them, the Shita Mekubetzet explained based on this Rashi, for those soon-to-be wives, that they should be sure that there is a way for protection, that they should collect the marriage contract, the Ketubah, and be happy with their marriage life. Meaning, ועדיין כשהוא כועס עליה, and even those moments that the husband gets frustrated and angry at her, and he said to her in that moment of anger, אומר לה, לכי אצל כתובתך. What did he say to her? Go to your marriage contract, as it's too easy for them to divorce, right? Because it's over there, they knew that that money located for that, so therefore itkinu, so the sages come in and instituted a new audience, meaning a new decree. שיהיו מניחים אותה בבית חמיה, that they leave it in a house of her husband's house, meaning the in-laws' house. Which means, עשירות עושות אותה הקלטות, the wealthy woman will craft the marriage contract money into baskets of silver and gold, של כסף ושל זהב, עניות היו עושות אבית של ממי רגליים. And the poor ones will craft it in a large vessel for the collection of urine, which means that the marriage contract was large enough only for a small vessel. So, and therefore you will not be impetuous with the divorce. ועדיין כשכועס עליה אומר לה תלי כתובתך אצלי, עד שבא שמעון בן שטח ותיקן שכותב לה כל נכסי אחרים לכתובתה, until he comes and said all the property is guaranteed to her marriage contract. So therefore, it's not part of particular subject, and in that sense, he will need to sell some of his property if he wishes to divorce her, and therefore he will be very circumspect, very cautious before he making such a drastic course of action. So the Sha'arim HaMetsuyanim Ba'alacha, it's a famous book, he speaks about the idea of tav lemeitav. We said before that the woman preferred to be with her husband even he is not behave in a regular manner or have a lot of minuses, but the whole idea is that since all the estate is basically subjugate to the husband, so therefore she have the frameworks that she feel good, she feel safe, she feels secure. Rabbi Moshe Weisblum of 1550 said in our days he asked a question, do you really need Ketubah nowadays? Why? He says, based on this Gemara, we said that the purpose of Ketubah is it should not be kala beinav lotzia, it should not be easy in his eyes to divorce her. But since we have Rabbeinu Gershom and all these takanot, that what? That tells us that you cannot, be'al kocha, you cannot do it against her will, you cannot divorce her. So what's the purpose of the whole Ketubah? It's a question the Rama asked. Rabbi Naftali Katz is a great author. He wrote a book called Smichut Chachamim. So he asks a question. Look, he says, the whole purpose of 200 zuz, of the 200 for the Betula, is to have protection. Now think about it. People get divorced. What's the reason, the key reason of divorce? If you examine in a very general terms, they always claim that it's related to parnasa, it's related to money. Related to that he cannot support, she cannot bring in our income, the expenses are too much, she is a spendthrift, he is a spendthrift, they expending too much. You relate directly, indirectly with money. So he said, guess what? We don't want to increase, God forbid, the gitin, that the bet din will be busy to write gitin all the times. So they said, even there are some problems, they instituted 200 Jews. Why 200 Jews? Because if you remember, when involved with a poor person, if someone is pressed for fund, God forbid. So if, remember we studied that Mishna that said, if he has 200 Jews, he cannot collect from the charity fund. Only someone who has less than 200 Jews in his estate. Meaning, now think together, that's what Smicho Chachamim said. And Naftali Katz said, guess what? If a person already have 200 Jews, which he's supposed to pay her if he wants to break up the marriage, so now you examine it carefully, you can tell me that it's a money issue, it's other issues between him and her. You can't tell me it's because they cannot support or cannot, it's something else. Why? Because we instituted 200 Jews, which means you basically departed from the framework of a poor person, because the definition of the Mishnah is you considering a poor only if you have less than 200 Zuz. Since you exceeded more than 200 Zuz, which means you're not poverty-stricken, and you insisted that you want to divorce her, you cannot tell us that the issue are monies. It go a different direction. You have other issues, and that's the reason you want to divorce her, and therefore it's a different story. Hadran alach haisha shenaflo.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai